Okay, thank you very much. And welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session. Today's session is going to be how to integrate BIAN APIs 10 times faster. And by doing that, deliver a composable banking experience. Big claim, and I'm sure you're all sitting there thinking, okay, I've heard this before. Let's see if it actually is the case. My name is Simon Peel. I've been in the integration and API space now for just over 20 years. I've had the privilege of working at a lot of Silicon Valley's most innovative startups and some of the world's biggest companies. Companies like Vitria, Cast Iron Systems, IBM, the Jitterbit iPass API platform, and now OpenLegacy. I've certainly seen a lot of technologies come and go. And actually, I think the phrase should be come and stay, because most of these technologies actually don't go. They still have to be put together and implemented and then looked after for a very long time. And that increases the complexity that we all have to deal with. So what I really love is the idea of BIAN trying to simplify things so that financial houses can actually talk together is an absolutely fantastic one. It's something that we need because the future of all of our companies really depend on interoperating between companies externally. So what I'd also like to talk about, though, is what happens when you want to try and take that external communication and bring it into your internal systems. Because it's that sort of 20 years, or in some cases 40 years of legacy systems and history and all kinds of different technologies which need to work with the BIAN APIs. So we might have a beautiful lingua franca externally, but inside the bank, we have a morass of lots of different technologies. So I want to talk about the whole picture end to end. The title of today's session is Doing Things 10 Times Faster for a very good reason. And let's take a look at what that might be. Recently, there were 260 board members asked by Gartner, what is the impact, the biggest impact of COVID-19 as far as your organization's digital business initiatives? And certainly 50% of them said, we've got to do some cost optimization, right? Which clearly is not a fun thing to go through. We also have to get better operational excellence. In other words, do a lot more with less. So that's going to be really tricky. But if you look at the thing that the board of directors were expecting the most, it was acceleration. So let me get this right. We're going to cut our costs. We're going to squeeze the existing business for more efficiency through operational excellence. We're going to also want to transform our business models. And less than half of the board of directors said that they would be willing to increase investment. Ouch. Okay, so how do we achieve this? Because this is how we are all being measured against this acceleration. So really it's about, what's interesting is that the focus on efficiency is actually what got highlighted as not necessarily the best thing in the world during the pandemic and because of the pandemic, because it highlighted that we've all been focused on efficiency for a long, long time. And banks which were very efficient suddenly needed to change rapidly. Suddenly, there's no high street bank. There's no branch that people can go into. Suddenly, the online experience becomes everything. Suddenly, a lot of the offerings and products which were available in branch were not available online, or the online experience was terrible, given that most people want to use mobile. So yes, many of us did have a good banking application, and we had a digital experience, but just were not ready at all for the huge influx of digital clients that were coming at any one time. So, the businesses that are going to do the best and the banks that are going to do the best are those that can pivot to a more modular setup. And that does mean BIAN externally, right? These are modular, little small APIs we can use, but it also means what happens inside the firewall. To put some numbers around this, Gartner is saying that within a couple of years, the companies which have adopted this intelligent composable approach will outpace their competitors by 80%. Now, I don't need to tell you that something like $4.9 trillion has flowed into startup banks. right? Non-traditional banks, and that millennials would rather bank with those non-traditional banks than with traditional infrastructured banks to date. It's something that we're aware of, but this idea of composable and also the word intelligent, in other words, think of machine learning and AI being applied to the experiences so that they're personalized at scale, is really what is going to differentiate winners from losers. And I don't know about you, but I've been doing this for 20 years. For 20 years, people have been saying, oh, if you don't do this, terrible things will happen. And none of those terrible things particularly happened until the beginning of this year. In the beginning of this year, the world did turn upside down and is still very much upside down. It's not going back in its box, and the 2020s will be defined by large amounts of change, right? The inability to find the right kind of workers is clearly a real problem, a massive technology gap that we have. The burnout of technology itself, or the what do they call it, tech fade, where the latest thing just can't come and save us straight away. There's a lot of things pressing on us that mean we have to change, and we have to change in a meaningful way. The answer that Gartner's putting forward, and something that I strongly believe in, is the ability to take businesses and basically decompose them into reusable assets. And that includes legacy systems, and actually most importantly legacy systems, with more than 90%, as you know, 90% of financial institutions, and actually 94% of retailers for that matter, using legacy systems and mainframes. So we have to take this idea of composability really seriously. But let's take a look at how we might do that. The architectures that we have are certainly built for being able to take things like BIAN, services, BIAN services, and be able to bring those into the bank. However, those infrastructures are often based on ESB or SOA type architectures. So what, right? They've done very well for us up until now. So some of the issues here are that where we look at our traditional way of working, the size and the scope of the APIs we're used to dealing with are really big, right? The very large grain APIs, they perform complicated functions, typically large functions that will span multiple different systems and so on. Also, they depend a lot on reusability. That sounds great, let's reuse. The problem with that is that you have massive dependencies then. If every single API is trying to reuse another API, that means all your APIs are depending on every other API, and that creates a lot of issues around resiliency. Resiliency is, again, it is a big issue because there's a single point of failure in all this, and that is the B in ESB, right? The enterprise service bus is created so that the bus can do things, but the bus is a single point of failure. It also adds latency. And then finally, with this sort of complicated architecture, the issue is that there are people and resources behind this. And when we've just heard about the decrease in costs we've had to make, it means that we actually can't actually staff up all these different areas. At runtime, you find that all of these systems have to be connected and have to be working in order for BIAN services to be able to connect into the backend systems and go, and forward and back. So to me, that is a very large grain, very centrally dependent, not monolithic, but getting close to it because it's such a large grain services type of system, and that is not composable. That is not at all what's meant by composable. So let's get to the cut to the chase here. So this 10 times faster, what's the answer? Well, BIAN is driven by a set of specifications, right? It's not a coded API. It's not, here's a Java program and you need to go and use it. It's, let's define a specification that we know will work from the business down, not from the systems up. The specifications are the best ways to produce quality APIs. They've been extremely well thought out. These API definitions can be made in things like JSON and YAML, but independently of code. So actually, this really gives rise to the ability to do code generation. So because there's a really good definition of APIs, it's possible to generate the code to create all the services. generating the code, generating services is much faster than writing the services. And it's in this way that we're certain that the definition that's been created actually corresponds to what the services was supposed to expose. The auto generation is going to do its job the same every time for all the different APIs. Right? There's 186 different BIAN APIs at this point with magnificent specifications. A machine will generate those APIs faithfully every time and will generate them consistently and in whatever language you particularly want to go and generate it. So it can be deployed on whatever cloud or infrastructure internally or externally you want to do. So that's without having to hire lots of different people with lots of different skills to maintain these things. So this is avoiding a lot of repetitive tasks, and it's freeing up people so that the people can do the more difficult stuff. This also means that you were able to generate testing and tests and so on, so that we can also make sure that these are very tested. Some of the benefits of this approach, and this isn't, by the way, an approach that is that OpenLegacy invented or anything like that. The microservices clearly are an industry-wide thing. What OpenLegacy specializes in is opening legacy systems, right? So even going to core mainframes and taking the mainframe and breaking it up into microservices, exposing them as independent services, cloud-native services, so that they can be used immediately. That is something which is intensely difficult to do if you do it by hand. It's also something that takes a lot of time. So most people with core systems and especially mainframes are looking at how do I re-platform, how do I modernize, but these things are going to be done over years typically. We need to be accelerating now. So generating these microservices from the existing systems and doing that in a matter of days or weeks changes the entire dynamic and frees up all of that ability to do more innovation much more quickly. It also means, because they're microservices, these little things are independently deployed. So actually you can deploy, you don't have to deploy entire applications, you can deploy specific services, and it just simplifies the creation. They also independently scale. So if you have massive usage of your mobile applications that you didn't expect because of COVID, as an example, that service will just naturally scale. We don't have to scale and pay for all the other services to scale at the same time. We have one large bank that's processing about 96 to 150 logins per second on their mobile apps going through OpenLegacy. But they don't have to worry about whether it's scaling up or scaling down during the night or during the day. That's automatically done. And then we end up with smaller targeted teams doing the development, smaller code bases, and much better resilience. The last thing I'll say is you're technology agnostic at this point because you're focused on the BIAN standards instead of hard coding everything. And who cares about that? Well, guess what? Docker just got deprecated. Who the heck thought that would happen, right? Something that most people are still trying to roll out is now being whacked in favor of of newer technologies. So we don't know what technology holds for us, but what we do know is that being able to base things on specifications, business-led specifications, is going to help well into the future. Now, when I talk about APIs and we talk about BIAN, there are, I mentioned, 186 different APIs. Each one of those has to be connected into the back-end systems. If you look at what that normally takes, developing the API, writing the code isn't the thing that takes most of the time. And that's often what we think of when we think of, oh, we can whack together an API, how tough is that? Really? Who designed it? Who put the build mechanisms around it? Who wrote all the tests for it? Who had to modify it? What about the governance team, the security team, the networking implications, quality control, and finally all of the deployment issues that come along with it? So what you actually find, the full life cycle of taking a BIAN API and creating that from one end to another can run into sort of 6 months on average. This particular bank, and I can't tell you which one it is, but it's one of the many we've worked with, and I've put some examples below here. But essentially, that took 7.6 months and 179K if you just added everything up. There's a spreadsheet behind this, which we can show you. Using OpenLegacy, we're able to cut that down to 1.2 months for the entire cycle from one end to another, and save 93%. Now, 93% saving is pretty good, right? Not just in cost, but really in time when we're talking about speeding things up. But if you think about a 93% decrease in cost, right, which here is 167K, that's one API. But what you've got to do is build a factory to be able to pump out these APIs, 186 of them. If you did the maths on 186 BIAN APIs multiplied by 167K saving, it's $31 million in saving. So whether you take these numbers and you think, oh, I'm going to get 93%, or you think you're going to get 50% or 20%, which it will be way more than that, you can see that it multiplies out dramatically. So let's get to a very specific case of a member, a bank of BIAN here, which is Bank Leumi. And I've got my colleague here, Gil, who's going to join us. He's the leading person on this, the Bank Leumi customer account. So Bank Leumi traces its history back to 1899. The Bank Leumi Group is now, one of the most significant global presences out there in banking, and really looks for long-lasting relationships. So Gil, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So Gil, you've been working with Bank Leumi for a long time. I know a very good member of the BIAN community. What was it that first engaged you when you first spoke to Bank Leumi? What was it about?
It was about creation, what you spoke about, eliminating the need to go through many layers and go and do a much quicker integration into their legacy system, which is a mainframe, CICS mainframe. Mm-hmm. That was the initial.
Do you know why? Like, what was pressuring them? Why was speed an issue for them?
There is a regulation here by the Central Bank of Israel where they need to open a few services externally in some form, open banking services that they need to open to about 8 to 14 of those, and they need to do it by the end of March. They need to be up and running in production by the end of March. They started with the traditional way, and it took them so long. It took them a long time. So they came to us, and we've done for them all of those 14 APIs, and actually they're going to deploy 8 of them in about, I don't know, 4 months, something like that. Everything is ready, production ready. It's now in final staging area. It's supposed to go live next week or the first week of January, really depending on them.
Okay, so that's interesting because it's not just something that could be done quickly. It's something that had to be done quickly. I also think of some of the other banks we've worked with who are looking at compliance issues, which have obviously specific times that need to be held to, and so that's another big use of this. What was do you know what the business problem that was trying to be solved here? Now, BIAN recommends, when banks work with BIAN, they recommend a pilot. Can you tell me about the pilot that Bank Leumi did?
So Bank Leumi, before the decision on what we do, they made a pilot on what we are supposed to offer them. And one of the pilots that we were asked to do is to show whether or not we can also use BIAN as a framework for the contracts for the API that they're gonna expose. So in a way, they gave us, I think it was, what was it? I forgot the specific API that they want to expose, customer transactions or customer statements, depending on the version of BIAN that you're talking. And we needed to show them how we can implement this contract into, and you can see it here in the slide, in the BIAN API contract that needs to be implemented and connected to the legacy system using OpenLegacy, of course. So in the slide, you can see on the right-hand side, you can see the BIAN API, the BIAN specification on the second from the right, and then OpenLegacy created SDK, or the connectivity to the mainframe, CICS of this BIAN specification.
Okay, so we're coming up on time here. I need to ask you the punchline here. How long did that take, and how many people did it take to do it?
It takes one person, one OpenLegacy implementation engineer. It took him about a day to do that, from the specification all the way to the back end.
Okay, that is a pretty good punchline. So appreciate the time there. Thank you very much, Gil, for giving us a BIAN member approach. So we're coming up on time here. What I want to point you to is the BIAN Guide to Adoption. And I love this because it gives you a step-by-step approach to adopt BIAN, from evaluating to building the actual case for BIAN. But the pilot stage shows up at stage 3. What I'd like you to do here is offer you to do your first API and have it integrated for free. So assuming you're looking seriously at BIAN, and it's not a science project, but something that you really want to get your teeth into, let's do that together, and let's learn together on our dime, and then we'll take it from there. And Gil, I'm sorry, but I put your email address up there because you've had a decent experience of this. So if you'd like to email gil.p@openlegacy.com, please do, and he can share his experiences going forward. So with that, I want to thank you for joining today and helping us take a look at how you can integrate BIAN APIs 10 times faster and deliver a composable banking experience. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you both. I think it's very elaborating. I think, yeah, there's also an incentive for the people who are in. Get your first API free. So that's an offer you can't refuse. That's at least what I would think. So again, thank you very, very much, not only for doing the presentation and sharing your insight, but also, of course, sponsoring the event. That's extremely valuable for us. So I like that very, very much. We appreciate it very, very much. Also highly appreciated by the BIAN board. And I would like to invite all the attendees to join the breakout sessions of their choice. So we have 4 work group meetings. We have the adoption working group, the payments working group, the API working group, the certification working group, and the strategy working group, 5 even. So also one for free for everybody, an additional working group. And then I will join you all back 5 minutes before the hour to thank you and ask you for your feedback so that we can improve on our performance here. So again, let's say I would like to thank OpenLegacy for the effort and the clear explanation, and I would give it back to the audience. Please join us at the next session, the parallel session, the breakout session.
All right, cool. Me and you, it looks like.